Hey guys, it's Phoenix here. So today I want to talk about Sosuke Aizen. His feats, his strengths, abilities, intellect, everything, and why, in my opinion, he was such a great antagonist. So for those of you who don't know who Aizen is a god tier antagonist from the Shonen Jump Big 3, Bleach. And he's god tier with good reason. In a world with literal death gods and monsters, this guy stands out amongst all of them. For starters, Aizen is a master manipulator. The man doesn't even have to lift a finger. He's just such a smooth talker that he was able to make everyone in the Soul Society second guess who their allies and enemies were, which you would think would be pretty normal, except for the fact that he has the ability to literally put people under perfect hypnosis. He doesn't need to go to the effort of lying or misleading people. He just does it because he can. He's so cunning and deceiving that he took advantage of people's trauma, insecurities, and beliefs to the point that they would literally die for him and strike down their closest friends, making them the perfect subordinates for his 110-year in the making plan. But intellect aside, his Zanpakuto Kyoka Suigetsu is what a moderate chunk of his plan is based around, and one of the reasons he's so badass. So like I said earlier, Kyoka Suigetsu, or Mirror Flower Water Moon as it's translated, has the ability of perfect hypnosis. And I don't just mean in the sense that he can put people in a sleep-like state and make them do whatever he wants. It's more like it tricks all of a person's senses to a degree that he can make a graveyard look like a field of flowers or turn a fly into a dragon from the viewer's perspective. And all he has to do is show his sword's release just once to any person, and from that point on, he can slip him in and out of his hypnosis whenever he wants to. So with this in mind, he displayed his sword's release to the majority of the Gote 13 court guard squads, but most importantly, the captains and vice captains, tricking them into believing that Zanpakuto had water-based abilities given the name. Originally, it was believed that he could create a mist that confuses opponents into attacking each other and things of that nature, instead of giving him full control over their senses. And what's so broken about this ability is that it's basically indefinite. Even the Vizards who witnessed his sword's release way back 110 years ago were still affected when they faced him in the Fake Karakura-tan arc. But by that point in the series, he had basically outgrown the use of his Zanpakuto because the Hogaku, which he absorbed, was slowly evolving him as it matured. Which, although it was really cool and everything, honestly, it removed any chance of us getting to see what his Bankai would have been. But it's honestly also really hard for me to imagine what the next step could be for perfect hypnosis or how you could build upon that. I guess instead of just hypnotizing people, it could create real physical objects of whatever he wanted, but either only for specific people or possibly doing that on a mass hypnosis scale, like doing it for everybody, creating in realistic environments and real enemies and things of that nature, or again, pretty much whatever he wants. Actually, now that I think about it, his subordinate Kaname Tosen's Bankai had the ability to remove people's senses, so I feel like that was good foresight on Aizen's part because Tosen's Bankai would be a good counter to Aizen, and since he's blind, he doesn't really have to worry about the hypnosis, because again, you need to be able to see the release for it to take effect. But going back to Aizen, so his main abilities used are similar to what I mentioned with making his opponents believe that they were attacking him when really they were attacking an ally, or sometimes even having them attack him just for him to reveal that they were attacking a fake Aizen, and then he cuts them down like he did with Toshiro Hitsugaya, the captain of Squad 10. Now, technically, his perfect hypnosis does have a flaw, where if you touch Kyoka Suigetsu prior to its release, you're immune to his abilities, which is somewhat similar to what Zaraki Kenpachi did during his battle with Tosen in his Bankai. However, the actual chances of getting close enough to Aizen to do so, especially without him noticing, are slim to none. But the thing is, Aizen screws with people's heads so much that even if you were able to successfully do it, he could just make you think that you're not actually touching it, or that you're not actually talking to him. You see, again, that's what makes this such a good ability. It's just there's so many aspects that you can do. Like you could have your opponent think that you're to the left, so they cut to the left, but actually you're to the right, and you could have your opponent think that you're cutting, Aizen, but you're really cutting your brother or whoever's most important to you, and it's just that trickery that makes it such a beautiful ability. But with that being said, even without his sword, Aizen is just such an excellent antagonist. Like, he can crush opponents' will to fight and make them doubt themselves with just words alone. Moving on from his Zanpakuto, Aizen is a master at Kido. He can use high-level spells such as Hado number 90, Kuro Hitsugi, aka Black Coffin, without using an incantation like his child's play. Now keep in mind, it was at a third of his power, but it was still strong enough to drop Captain Komamura, and he was basically a tank. Not on the same level of Kenpachi, but a tank nonetheless. Aizen is also protected by defensive Keto barriers, which makes it a little hard to land a hit on him, regardless of whether the opponent uses Keto or a sword. It's just hard to get near the guy in general, which is probably why he isn't worried about the flaw of his hypnosis technique. Which honestly, he does kind of have a god complex on top of the fact that he was overpowered as hell. So if I were him, I probably wouldn't be too worried about it either. His spiritual pressure is so strong it can crush people to the point that they can't stand or breathe, and some people are even disintegrated just by being close to him if they're weak enough. He was cunning enough and strong enough to defeat and dethrone the king of Hueco Mundo and All Hallows, Lord Baragon. And to add insult to injury, he made him the number 2 Espada on his team of 10 Arrancar that he had as his subordinates, which is pretty. It's honestly a pretty boss move if you don't, if I don't say so myself. Like honestly, that's some top tier stuff. He has mastered Shunpo, the flash tap technique, to the point that he can attack an opponent before they've even realized he's moved, similar to Ichigo's first encounter with Byakuya Kuchiki in the substitute Shinigami arc, who at the time was the fastest flash tap user we knew of until Yoruichi was introduced. And on that note, he can easily outmaneuver Hollow Mask Bankai Ichigo, who can fight on par with Captain Kuchiki in Bankai. And as we all know, that version of Ichigo had the speed to cut through every petal of Zanpan Zakura, which that's a really good feat in its own, but just for the simple fact that they were moving at double the speed that they normally would be. And Aizen is faster than that's, he ain't nobody touching him. But using his sword, he has cut down numerous captains, vice captains, and visors, some even when they are using their Bankai, which is an even greater flex of his raw power because his sword's abilities don't grant him immense strength, elemental, or otherwise ranged techniques. Because again, it's hypnosis based around, just hypnotizing people and creating mirages or illusions. It doesn't have anything that's really damage based. I mean, you can trick people into attacking each other, or you trick them into using their Bankais against each other, but he doesn't even do that. He's so cocky that he doesn't even release it. Well, he uses the abilities, but like when he's fighting them, he's just like taking them on one by one, and he's literally just walking through all their attacks like he's Neo in the Matrix, like he just does not care. He was able to stop Ichigo's Tensa Zangetsu with a single finger, nearly cutting him in half in the process. Now, Ichigo was weakened from the battle with Byakuya at the time, and although he had gone through all those fights and everything, and he was tired, and he still technically had his bandages wrapped up on him and everything, even at full strength, he wouldn't have been able to touch Aizen at the time. I mean, because he was barely captain level at that point. And I say barely captain level because, I mean, he fought Kenpachi too, but Kenpachi plays around with his enemies. Like, he likes to get into it and enjoy his fight, so he doesn't go full strength right away. And honestly, the way they built up Kenpachi in the beginning, like he's the infamous Zaraki Kenpachi. The title of Kenpachi goes to the one who most enjoys fighting and killing. No matter how many times he's wounded, he'll never go down. He can't die. Like literally when he's introduced in the anime by Hinataro, they literally say he can't die, and then he gets cut down by Ichigo and a Shikai. And I get it, Kenpachi didn't have a Shikai at that time. He wasn't using both hands. He wasn't, he was toying around with Ichigo. In fact, he had him on the ropes for the majority of that fight until Ichigo finally started talking to Zangetsu and getting his spiritual pressure under control. But honestly, Zaraki Kenpachi should have been a lot stronger in that fight than he seemed, but I digress. So, when fused with the Hogyoku, Aizen's spiritual pressure and power rose far beyond that of Shinigami levels, attaining a true godlike state through his many evolutions as the Hogyoku reached maturity. To the point that no one but Ichigo could stop him, and even then, Ichigo had to train and go into his Dangai form, or final Getsuga form, which only resulted with Aizen being restrained to a chair that constantly sapped his powers and being sentenced to 20,000 years in a prison known as Muken. Because of the Hogyoku, however, it granted Aizen immortality, so they literally couldn't kill him. And the Sogyoku, which was an execution method which had the power of 1,000,000 Zanpakuto, was destroyed by Ichigo, Captain Kyoraku, and Captain Ukitake. So that wasn't really an option. But honestly, even if it were an option, it would probably break the second it touched Aizen, because, I mean, he really was beyond the power of a Soul Reaper at that point, even without having the immortality and all those amped up transformations from the Hogyoku. I mean, he was just literally that strong. which is another thing that's really funny about this, though, is that Aizen's original sentence wasn't 20,000 years, it was actually 18. But Aizen is so much of a savage that when he's told that his sentence will be 18,000 years, he's like, "You mere mortals trying to pass judgment on me, that's funny." And they literally sentence him to 20,000 years because of that, just him talking like two sentences and then they cover his mouth. And I'm imagining the stuff that they wrap him is similar to what Kenpachi has in his eye patch. It just saps away his spiritual pressure. But he just has so much of it that I don't even think it would matter at that point, honestly. And finally, in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, after a year and a half of being sealed away in Muken and losing a majority of his abilities from the Hogaku, Aizen was able to go head to head with the father of all Quincy and the final antagonist, Yuha, who could handle the head captain and his Bankai. Now, this was a little bit tricky of a fight because in the manga, they used a Quincy who basically had the ability to shapeshift into Yuha and I guess have some of his abilities, and he was able to fend off the head captain. So there's that, and then you have Yuha who fought the head captain 1,000 years ago. So Aizen was able to go toe-to-toe with that guy, and this was only with 3 of his seals being removed at the time. Keep in mind, the head captain, strongest Shinigami, and it took Aizen to have 3 seals removed, and he was already going toe-to-toe with Yuha. And what's even crazier is just with those 3 seals removed, he was able to unleash the strongest Hado, number 99, Goryuten Metsu, or 5 swirling dragons of destruction like it was nothing. Again, with 3 seals removed, he's dropping nuke-level Hados on the Wonder Reich, and he's just that overpowered. It was ridiculous. Can't wait to see that fight animated, to be completely honest. During that fight with Yuha, he does lose an arm, and he gets pierced through the chest, but he still just has this smug expression on his face, and he's been using his perfect hypnosis on Yuha, and he didn't realize that he was actually fighting Aizen, and so he literally goes, "Oh, you thought you were fighting Ichigo, but it was me, Dio, the whole time." And he just pulls a Dio, but with Aizen, and it's really just classic for his character and for his personality. I just thought that was really funny the first time that I read that. So Aizen, the man who would replace God or end him, that was his goal. Not really a selfish one per se. It was just his stance on the world and why he didn't really understand how everything could be ruled by the Soul King. Now, honestly, I don't know at what point he decided that his philosophical beliefs were against that of his comrades. I mean, it doesn't really show that Aizen went through any personal grief that would drive him towards the goal of obtaining power necessary to defeat the Soul King and end their status quo, so to speak. But maybe it's just that he couldn't come to terms with such a thing towering over his life and the way that he lived. It's more or less to a sense that to him, even though removing the Soul King could be the end of everything, the ends justify the means, so they wouldn't have such a being. Because if you saw it, the Soul King was really freaky. It was just kind of like a mannequin just chilling there. So I kind of get it from that perspective, like especially a man that's as smart as Aizen. Like I can definitely understand why he couldn't come to terms with something like that. So really, Aizen was one of the strongest characters in Bleach, and honestly one of the best antagonists I've seen in a long time. He didn't forget his reasoning for what he did. He didn't get replaced by another villain at the last second. Yes, we got Yuha as the final antagonist, but Aizen still stayed relevant until the very end and stuck to his morals the whole way through. And when Yuha's goals came to fruition, even though they were both villains, Aizen saw the flaws in Yuha's vision and ultimately sided with the Shinigami. I mean, he may have done it for his own reasons, but still. Now, manga-wise, the ending was extremely rushed, so I can't wait to see what they're going to do with the 1,000-Year Blood War arc in the coming year with the anime returning and everything. But I really, really hope they do a good job with it, because this is like one of the first animes I've ever watched, and they deserve to do it justice. So this was the end of the video. I really enjoyed making it, and thanks for watching if you made it this far. It took numerous hours of compiling all my knowledge on Aizen and Bleach to put this together, so if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and comment, or subscribe for more content. Eternal Phoenix, signing out.